And welcome back, students. As we continue to dive into talking about conditionals, let's discuss that of multi-way if-else. So we kind of got a good introduction of if-else last time. Now we're going to do a little bit more examination of them. So as we get started with today's lesson, we have already talked about if-else and a little bit about nested statements, where you can put a thing inside of itself. However, sometimes though you can't contain everything with just two conditions, like just an if and an else. So for example, let's say we want the user to input a positive or a negative number. However, instead they put 0, which technically isn't really neither. All right, yes, you could argue that it can fill in one number, say there, but it's kind of its own thing. Well, we need another if statement, but we only have 2 lines of code. So in Java, how we've been handling this so far has been using if-else statements, but there's actually another thing called an else-if statement that can actually handle this third condition. So this is what's known as a multi-way if-else statement. It's not a different kind of Java statement, rather than an extension of what we learned last time. So we're not having to learn a whole new chunk of syntax, really. We're just adding on to what we already know. So what happens is that Java tests each condition to test if it's true. If it's true, it's going to test the code inside the block. If it's not, we're going to just keep on checking. So let's expand our general syntax to include a few if-else statements. So if Boolean expression, statement 1, else if Boolean expression, statement 2, etc., 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 all the way down to else if Boolean expression n, statement n, else statement for all their outcomes. All right. When we look at this, you can see, of course, what is always at the top? An if. So remember, we always have to have an if statement. That's one of the things we talked about in the last lesson. Then we have these else if statements. And you'll notice that in here, we can have as many else ifs as we want. There's no set limit on else ifs. All right. So you can come in here and do any of that stuff in here. And of course, you can put multiple lines of code inside of anything, so you don't have to be simply one line of code. You can have 3, 4 chunks of code. And then at the end, we have an else. Similar to before, we don't have to have the else, even with an else if. But a lot of times when we're testing multiple conditions, a lot of times we will have an else to act as our kind of catch-all for everything. So here's a sample code of that. So I have if number of people is less than 50. I'm just going to output that is less than 50. Else if the number of people is less than 100, it's at least 50, more than 100, less than 200, at least 100, and less than 200, and then otherwise at least 200. Now, the reason why I can say, for example, it's at least 50, even though I don't have anything here in this line of code that talks about 50, is because the way Java does this is it comes in and checks this top condition first. So it's going to check the number of people less than 50 first. All right, so it's going to check this one. Oh, well, it can't be less than 50. So I'm going to go on. And because I already know that it's not less than 50, it has to be at least 50. All right, so that's why I can say that. And same thing here. It has to come and check if it's less than 100. Well, if let's say the number was 150, well, I know that it's at least 100, but it's going to be less than 200. All right, and then, of course, then I can output just as a catch-all. So let's say it was 210 people. All right, obviously, nope, it's not 210, not 210, not 210. So this acts as a catch-all right here. Now, if this else did not exist here, and it was, let's say, 210, it just wouldn't output anything. So how Java checks multiple conditions. As I've already mentioned, in the sample code that we just looked at, the first if is to test if it's less than 50. So it's going to look to see if the number is less than 50. If it is, it's going to do whatever code that is. The second is going to test to see if it's less than 100. The third for less than 200. And the else will act as our catch-all. Java always tests the first condition and then works down. Right? As soon as it finds a true condition, it's going to perform that code for that block and exit. So it's not going to, let's say my number was 150. It's not going to output each of those things that are true. So if I go here and say this is 150, it's not going to output less than 50, at least this one, at least this one. No, it's only going to do the one that's true. So even if, let's say I had this one right here, that at least 200, and the number was 150, it's not going to say at least 100, less than 200, at least 200. It's only going to output this one line. That's the only thing it's going to do. And then once it does that, it's going to exit this if-else block. All right. So if the number of people, for example, was 50 now, it would meet technically the second and third conditions. However, only the second condition would be performed before Java exits the conditional. Because, yes, technically 50 does meet this criteria. But because this is the first one that it meets, that's the one that Java is going to do. Java always goes with whatever the first one is, and then it exits out of that block. So here's another sample code. I have if x is equal to 5, this is another print line, x has the value of 5. If x equals 10, x has the value of 10, and then else x is a different value. So we can see here we're just checking to see if x is 5, if it is 10. Otherwise, we're just going to say it's something else. So multiple conditions in an expression. Now this is getting into compound expressions. So with any if else statements, we can check for more than one expression. So for example, if number is less than 20 and number is greater than 5. We can use either and with double ampersand or an or, which is the double pipe. Now and means both conditions must be true for the condition to pass. Or means only one condition must be true for the conditions pass. So if my number, for example, let's say was 10, all right, and I have an and here, is 10 less than 20? Yes. And then I'm going to check, is 10 greater than 5? Yes. So because both of these are true, the whole expression is true. Now here's a quick sample code for and or. So here I have if x is greater than 0 and x is less than 100, so it has to be between 0 and 100. Or if x is greater than 0 or x is equal to negative 5. So x is either 0 or larger or is equal to negative 5. So just a quick example of how those two expressions can work. All right, and that's going to wrap up this set of notes, folks, and I will see you again next time.